I don't know that I have a painting style. I kind of just do my best and see what happens. And that leads to some very fun models. I've been recently doing some higher level painting where I spend more time per miniature, and I've been enjoying the results that that's given me. But I do think that there's a through line in a bunch of these paint jobs, and that's that everything is very literal. I particularly noticed this painting up this figure, Theophenia, a gladiator from the game Arena Rex, and I agonized over this paint job, trying to make the cloth feel really soft, the bronze really shiny, the skin skinny. I tried really, really hard, and I am really proud of how this model turned out. But after I was done painting this figure, I thought, what if I did the opposite? What if instead of being really, really literal and trying to make everything like perfectly represent what it is, what if I painted more frenetically, more abstractly, more weirdly? When I paint like this, I start to see the matrix. That cape's gonna take about an hour. The skin, that's 45 minutes to another hour. That helmet, I don't know if I can paint up a dozen of those helmets. I start to see everything in its process, but there's no rules when it comes to painting. I kind of want to just mess around and see what happens. Recently, I was inspired by these Mounthaven Dwares from Warcrow. The box art paint jobs are fantastic, and I love all the exaggerated shapes and textures going on with these sculpts. I feel like these would look good in any style of painting. These are the newest faction for the game Warcrow, the Mounthaven Dwares. They're the 6th faction in the game, going to war against the forces of the northern tribes, the dark forces of Yaldabaoth, and everybody else. They are your classic dwarves, short, tough weaponsmiths who sell their second best equipment to the other factions. The best they keep for themselves. Mounthaven is on pre-order now and will hit the shelves on April 24th. Looking through the box, my favorite detail is the scale mail, and the models that really show this off are the Mounthaven militia. The sculpts are perfect, very clean and crispy, and there's no mold lines to clean up, so I quickly threw together 2 militia. They are so tiny, I thought I would put them on some big ol' bases to represent their underground homes. I coated the bases in some ultra thin superglue and I pressed down some 1/2 inch cork. I tore up the sides and then sanded it on an angle to make it look like a ledge. Testing it against my guy, I decided to add another layer, gluing it down with more ultra thin superglue. After some more messing around with my cork, I was happy with the shape and I drilled up into my mini's feet to add some 1mm brass rod. I stabbed these down into the cork and it's given them a much more stable footing. Now to tidy up the bases a little, I smeared on some texture paste over the flat spots. I really like the weight that these big ol' bases give to these figures. They feel very solid. Once the texture paste was dry, I hit the models with some black primer. I'm really impressed by how clean the models are. Looking at some of the other heroes like Roderick and the Hammer, there's some really, really nice details. But to learn my way around this faction, I want to work on the rank and file. And the models are so small, they should paint up quick. There is physically less to paint. I've got my Mounthaven militia all built and ready to go, but what colors? I feel like I've had a distinct lack of orange in my life lately. Maybe a little red-orange with some blue-green. Something really, really crazy. I think I'm gonna just throw it on there, see what happens, build myself a little problem, and then see if I can overcome it. I loaded up my palette with some turquoise, siren, and burning orange, some opposites, and then black and white so I can play around with their value. I mixed my black into these colors, which produced some very nice browns, and a cold gray. I have no plan going forward, I just need to try. So I loaded up a big junky brush and started slobbering this onto the models, letting it land all over the models and the bases. Then I did the same thing with my cold blue-gray color, being random so about half of each base and figure got each color. Then I went back to my palette and I made up some lighter versions of these colors, brushing these on, following the path I already made for myself originally. I feel like this is working, the models are coming to life. I went back to my palette and I mixed my colors with white. This makes them quite a bit brighter, and if I mix the 2 colors together, I get like a greenish brown. This greenish brown color is interesting, and I took it onto my brush and I started sketching it onto the shield. Then I tried to put a little on their pants. This feels like a pants color. I base coated the legs and then went back to my palette and I added some more white paint to get it brighter, and I started highlighting, doing more layers until it was looking good. This is working, although I can't exactly call it experimental yet. I think I just need to go for it. I started touching my brush to the model, which led me to edge highlighting the scale mail with orange. I followed my base coats of orangey brown, and without thinking too hard, I put this all over the shield as well. The sketchy highlights are looking like something. I'm just gonna keep on going for it. I did the same thing with the blue, painting this on as edge highlights, following the blobs I laid down before. He's looking a little like a pumpkin, but there is something there. I glazed on more brown over the orange to darken the colors a little, but I need to see more before I know what the model needs. I base coated his beard in orange, doing a few coats to get it nice and bright, and seeing this big patch of orange, now the scale mail doesn't look bright at all. I went back over the top of each scale to make them brighter. Then I moved down to the shield. I already have some bright orange and bright blue on there, so I tried sketching on some white highlights so I could see what it would look like super bright. and I decided to put this over the beard too, trying to really punch up the vibrancy. I glazed my orange over the white, letting some of that white show through to try to make these spots the brightest spots on the model. Now there is a lot of orange, it needs some more blue. I mixed some white into my blue and I did some edge highlights hitting the scale mail and his shield and armor. His helmet is right next to the orange beard, so I don't want to go orange. But I don't want all of his armor to be blue either, so I decided brown. I did some highlighting of brown over the helmet, then quickly working up to bright highlights of tan to try to get something goldish looking. It's not quite gold, but it is different from the beard. I've been doing all the same steps on the second militia model too, and they're coming along nicely with only these two colors. Everything is pretty dark except for the hair and beards, and I think I can bring some more attention to another part, the weapons. These are still mostly primer black, and I started sketching on some highlights and edge highlights on my light blue. Then I quickly worked up through glazes of light blue and then to white paint. There is no white anywhere else on the model, so this extreme and dramatic contrast only being on the swords will make them stand out proudly next to the rest of the model. I feel like I'm pushing the limits of two-color painting. My palette is coated in every different shade I can possibly make. I have been painting for a while now. 2 colors. It has been very interesting. I keep painting and then I keep running into full saturation blue or full saturation orange, and then having to kind of like figure it out how to get things a little bit more intense, a little brighter, a little bit more interesting. And I feel like it's worked pretty good. The brightest spots are the weapons and the darkest spots so far are the bases, although I do have plans for those later. I would definitely have done different things if I was just reaching for whatever color I wanted, but because I have limited myself to these 2 colors, I've definitely had to overcome some challenges. And the next big challenge is the skin. I really want another color, but I think within these 2 colors, plus black and white, I think I can get there. I grabbed some orange and a little bit of brown, which is just orange plus black, mixed together into a light tannish color, and I started painting this on. The female dwarf has her face showing, and even though this is literally the same orange, it does look different than the hair. I mixed in some more white paint to brighten up the colors, and I started painting on some highlights, and it's hard to get a ton of contrast, but I feel like it is working. I did another layer of highlights focused on the temples, cheekbones, and nose. This layer has a lot more white in it, which makes the skin very pale. Although next to the bright orange, it still looks pretty lively. When I was happy with the skin, I took some pure black paint and I dotted the eyes, base coating them in black, doing a little dot of white and then a smaller dot of blue for the pupil. Not too shabby, and it's still only 2 colors. I mixed the orange and blue together to get my desaturated greenish sludge, and I threw this over the backpacks. There's still a little bit of that dark blue and brown in the base coats, and I started painting over this, only leaving it in the deepest recesses. I mixed some more white paint into this color to make some highlight layers, and I kept layering these on, one on top of another, until the backpacks were looking bright. Definitely not intense, they lack the color that's everywhere else on the model, but it does help separate them from the rest of the paint job. With the backpacks all done, I picked out all the equipment sticking out with my blue-green color, not highlighting these as much as I did the weapons in their hands, just enough to make them readable. And you know what's very readable? That's right, our website. Over there we have all kinds of hobby goodies, Grey Tide Studio bits, spice up your Space Marines, Army Painter paints, brushes, basin cork, and we've got glue, ultra thin and ultra thick super glue. And we have terrain. It's the best way to support us doing what we do by getting a membership. Each month members get a credit, good for any one terrain pack we've ever made or the brand new one. In April, we have created the Armored Accessories Bits Pack. This set is full of awesome components to make your vehicles as unique and characterful as your infantry, with all kinds of equipment, storage, barrels, and tools for your tanks to carry, seals and tassels that are vehicle-sized, big ol' missiles, and extra armor. So many pieces of armor plating in different sizes and styles, so your tanks can get an armored treatment that looks best on them. Whether it's a futuristic war machine, an ancient Hulk, or a chaotic monstrosity, these accessories will have your tanks covered. This Bits Pack is by tank players for tank players and is available both digitally and physically printed for you at EonsOfBattle.com. I think these models are done. It's hard to know where to stop. I could keep going and glazing over my highlights to get them smoother, but I like the energy the figures have now, so I think it's time to hit those bases. Now that my models are painted, they are very bright and the bases look almost black. I mixed black, white, and orange together to get a light brown color, and then I dry brushed this over the top of the base, doing a little bit of swiping and a little bit of stamping to lay this color down, only leaving that dark color in the recesses, and along the bottom of the base. Then I did some more dry brushing of this color, mixed with a little bit more white paint to brighten it up even more. I still feel like the black in the recesses feels too intense, so I mixed some orange into my brown to bring back the vibrancy, and I glazed this over the recesses to smooth out my shadows and make the rocks feel warmer. Now my models are feeling good. I hit them with a matte varnish and then I hit the base rooms with some black paint. 2 models painted with 2 colors. My Mounthaven militia are done, and boy oh boy, did 2 colors go a long way. In my quest to paint something a little bit more abstract, I kind of failed. I thought I would be a little bit more random with the colors, but the trick of working with only 2 colors I think my hand just naturally put things in the right spots. It almost became a challenge of, can I get all of the colors that I feel like I need out of these 2 colors? And it turns out I was right. I could do it. The orange and the blue definitely work together to give these guys a really interesting look that I kind of do want to see on the rest of the dwarves. Maybe on the Hearthguard minis with those big old shields. I really like those guys. And I am really digging the dwarves. In my Warcrow journey, I started out with the Yaldabaoth, the bad guy faction, and these guys actually have kind of a limited color palette too. Red, purple, and green, as opposed to the 2 colors on these guys. But I am digging the look of this collection. I feel like working off of a limited palette was a really fun challenge of painting up some fantasy minis. I don't paint a lot of fantasy minis. I mean, I do paint a lot of Age of Sigmar, but Age of Sigmar doesn't feel like it counts. Leave a comment if you also feel like Age of Sigmar doesn't count. Those models feel about the same as painting up 40k stuff. But these guys are some classic fantasy dwarves, and I do really like them. It has been many hours of staring at the exact same colors, but I don't know, I feel like I could paint up some more. I've got 2 models and 2 models, and now this is leading to the question of which faction do I like more, Yaldabaoth or Mounthaven? I would like to do both of them, but I do want to get a crew ready so I can actually get to gaming. The bad guys or the dwarves? I don't know, I might need to paint some more models before I can really decide. What I do know is working off of an extremely limited palette is actually a lot of fun. I kind of want to get some other minis, get some new colors, and run this experiment again and see what happens, because if it ends up like these dwarves, that would be pretty cool. Thanks for watching.